I told him who I was, and he said, "You can't go up there." And I said, "Why not? It's my house, and isn't it?" And he said, "Yes. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hancock, but you can't go up there."
Don Hancock and Lou Lewis had died instantly, and as usual, the police were met with a bikie wall of silence. Eventually, Gypsy Joker Sid Reed cooperated and is charged with murder. His alleged accomplice, a senior Gypsy Joker, Graham Slater, who was implicated by Reed, is found not guilty.
This is urban terrorism in Western Australia. Absolutely it is. It's well planned, well thought out, and Sid Reed tells us, because he ultimately rolls over and tells his story to police, and it had the effect that they wanted to on that day. And it was a remarkable event, a very violent event that really did shake the community of Western Australia.
They don't care about who they hurt or how much devastation they cause. They don't care, about human life. It's just evil. They're evil people.
When we come back, a fight night gets the bikie touch. A bikie chooses his own fate. And ex-Bandido Jeff Campbell still bears the scars.
Died for your club, Bandidos. I don't know really why. We'll all be together one day.
When bikies themselves fall out, it's never pleasant. No matter what the reason, throwing a gang member out can have deadly repercussions, as Rodney Monk found out. In 2006, Rodney Monk, or Hooksy as he was known, was the president of a Bandidos chapter.
The Bandidos are one of the truly international clubs, one of very few in this country, a very powerful club. And obviously Rodney Monk held a very powerful position within that club. On the night of his death, Rodney Monk had been invited down for dinner at a small bar and restaurant in East Sydney. It was only a few minutes into the dinner when one of the other fellows, Russell Oldham, indicated to Rodney Monk that he wanted to go outside and have a talk about a matter. So they went outside into a back lane.
Tell you how it's going down, mate.
Oldham shot Monk to death. 2 shots in the head.
The shooting had police baffled.
One would have to ask what caused that violence, what possible thing would make that happen, that shooting happen, in a fairly crowded area of Sydney on a weekday night. Russell Oldham disappeared from sight from the night of Rodney Monk's murder, and wasn't found again until, I think, the 11th of May, some 2 weeks later. Went across to Balmoral Beach in Sydney Harbour.
Oldham knew he was a marked man. The police and the Bandidos after him, in a surprising twist, he tragically took matters into his own hands.
He waded into the waters and took his own life by shooting himself in the head. It's impossible to know why he took his own life. One can assume that, firstly, he didn't want to spend the rest of his life in prison. Prison may not have been a fear for him. What he may have been scared of was what would happen to him if he fell into the hands of Rodney Monk's associates, other members of the Bandidos. Retribution probably would have been quite swift and quite horrific if that had happened.
In the bikie world, retribution is never far away. Enter Chris Hudson, a typical modern bikie. Violent, erratic. He started as a fink, finished as a Hell's Angel, and got into a hell of a lot of trouble along the way. Hudson first hit the police radar in 2006. Like most bikies, Hudson had a liking for the nightlife and the drugs that went with it. By By the time he lost the plot in this Sydney strip club, Hudson had convictions for assault, violence and fraud.
What the fuck's he doing here? What?
We believe that he came across a member of another bikie gang with whom he had some form of disagreement. He waited for him.
Come on! We'll talk to him! Above Reese, up there! But I don't have a problem.
And next thing you know, he shot him.
Hey man, he just shot me in the ass, you fucking crazy.
He was a dangerous man of extremes. 2 weeks after the Sydney shooting, Hudson was at it again, this time on the Gold Coast.
Two rival bikie gangs turned on each other in a full-scale riot.
1,800 people had turned up to the kickboxing when a wild brawl broke out. The man in the centre of the action, Christopher Hudson. Hudson was now a Hell's Angel. His old mates from the Finks took offence. It ended with 3 shot and 2 stabbed. One of those was Christopher Hudson. Hudson and several others went to jail over the brawl, but in June 2007 he was out on a suspended sentence and back on the streets, this time in Melbourne. After a booze and drug-fueled night, Hudson exploded again. At a time when most people were heading off to work, Hudson was heading home.
The fuck was that shit?
Hudson had already savagely attacked one woman, throwing her into the street and kicking her head in. She was taken to hospital while Hudson waited on King Street for his girlfriend, Kira Douglas. He then dragged Douglas at gunpoint into the car park. She escaped and Hudson chased her into Flinders Lane, grabbing her as she went to get into a cab. Two passers-by came to her aid, and Hudson shot them. He shot Paul DeWard, then Kira Douglas, then Brendan Keeler. Then he shot the 2 men again. He stopped when the gun was empty. Brendan Keeler died at the scene. The others survived. Just.
Help!
2 days later, Hudson handed himself into the police.
2 innocent bystanders tried to help. One of them's now dead. That's the violence that permeates bikie gangs.
When we come back on Gangs of Oz, the man who lost his family closes the chapter on his bikie life.
5 of your brothers were shot with kill shots above the waist. 3 of them die, and you're not wanted.
And another nail in the coffin for outlawed motorcycle gangs.
We seized about 35 firearms, 4,000 rounds of ammunition. We seized $2.5 million worth of property.
No shadow, shop, whack.
A brother is a brother. The pain of losing one is unbearable. Jeff Campbell lost 3. An old-school bikie, being a bandido was his life. His brothers gave theirs at Milperra.
He's died for your club, Bandidos. I don't know really why. We're all together one day. Brothers forever, forever brothers. Campbells.
Club loyalty now meant little. After a bitter internal dispute with other Bandido members, the Campbells were told they were no longer welcome.
Well, we had a disagreement with some members. We were surrounded by the members, my brother and I, and we were just asked to leave, and we left. And the next day, one of the members come around and asked for me colours. I said, yeah, you can have them, mate. Take them. You know, just sort of like, we've had enough. You put your life on the line for your club. My family died for it. We were shot, and yet we're unwanted. Well, you know, we've got over that, and we wouldn't go back if we were offered anyway.
For the victims, the pain will never go away.
I feel really let down by the justice system because there was plenty of evidence to convict the main ringleaders in the murder of Don and Lou, you know, and yet they set them free. And they're still walking around out there, probably planning to murder the next person that crosses their path.
For the police, the war continues. Don Hancock's death, not in vain.
We seized about 35 firearms, 4,000 rounds of ammunition. We seized $2.5 million worth of property. We seized $647,000 in cash from the Bikies, 3.8 kilos of speed, 1,007 ecstasy tablets, all consequential, all just part of the activities of the police, whilst they focused on the gypsy jokers.
Sid Reed, for his part in the death of Lewis and Hancock, is serving 15 years. The court case, following Milperra, was at the time the biggest in Australian history. 43 people were charged with 7 counts of murder. But for now, outlawed motorcycle gangs still ride our highways.